Hello everyone, this is Yana Smakula for Pretty Pink Posh. Thank you for joining me. Today's video shares a different way to color with alcohol markers, a fun way to use a whole lot of jewels, and 3 ways to use the new Jungle Friends and Jungle Editions stamp sets. Let's jump right in. I've started working on my cards by stamping all of the images I needed. I used Darling Critter images from the Jungle Friends and Jungle Editions stamp sets from Pretty Pink Posh, and also later stamped leaves, branches, and flowers. Because I had planned to color all of these using alcohol markers, I picked a suitable type of ink. This is Intense Black by Simon Says Stamp. I also stamped my images using a MISTI stamping tool to ensure perfect results. Using a MISTI is really optional here. You can stamp these using a clear block like I'm doing here, and you can also use any other black alcohol marker friendly ink for your stamping. With the stamping done, I proceeded to color my images. Lately, I've been enjoying the blending-free coloring technique. This method requires absolutely no blending when coloring with alcohol markers, and it works with all alcohol markers out there. Here, I'm using Artist Markers by Alt New, but I've also tried coloring like this using my Copic markers and Nuvo markers by Tonic Studios. The idea is to have harsh, defined lines that separate the different shades of one color. It is best to use the shades of markers that aren't too similar and have a clear difference to the naked eye. So if we're talking Copic markers, for example, I would not use a Y00 and Y02 markers, for example, as there wouldn't be that much of a difference between these 2 shades of yellow. They are too similar. I have already started to color the Monstera leaves. I first applied a solid layer of lightest green color. I let it sit for a few seconds to let the ink dry. You want to make sure the ink is dry on your paper before you apply the next layer. If the ink is wet, some blending will take place. We don't want any blending to occur, so best to wait for the previous layer to dry before adding the next layer over it. This type of coloring looks a lot like cartoon coloring to me. The images have simple colored look to them, sometimes even too simple. I used my next shade marker to define the highlight areas. I draw circles or ovals here and color everything outside those shapes, preserving the highlight. Next, I again let the ink dry. I used my darkest shade and again I drew circles or ovals and colored everything outside those shapes, creating harsh shadows for my image. Here's a look at all of the leaves I colored. The circles and ovals method doesn't work for every image. Where it doesn't make sense to draw shapes, I draw a line like on the leaves on the panel on the left. Let me show you how by coloring the flowers. For the flowers, I'm using Copic markers. I applied my lightest color. I added a solid layer of light pink to all of my flowers. I waited for the ink to dry. Next, I used a medium shade and added a curved line to each petal, coloring the petal from that line in towards the flower center. Again, I waited for the ink to dry. I next came in with my darkest shade and again drew a curve. I colored the petal from the curve to the center. You can apply the same coloring technique to color any other image. Let me show you how you would color a critter using this method. Let's start with a zebra. I'm first going to add shadows to the white section of my animal. I'm adding the light gray marker to the areas I want shaded. I'm drawing a curve and coloring that section using my marker. No blending is taking place. I let it sit for a few seconds to let the ink dry. Next, I use my medium shade marker and darken the shadows. I draw a curve and again color that section in. The sections are smaller this time. With the shading done, I used a dark gray marker and drew the black stripes on my zebra. The dark gray helps the white stripes pop, and the light gray shading helps to add dimension to the flat image. Now let's look at the hippo. I have already colored the entire image using a light gray marker. Now I'm using my medium gray marker and again, drawing lines or curves and coloring everything on one side of the curve, creating my shadows. I try to envision which section of my hippo is darker and which is lighter, and I add shadows to the darker sections. To deepen the shadows, I come in with my darkest gray marker and repeat, but color smaller sections this time. This is a very simple coloring method and one I think that is suitable especially for beginners. You don't need to worry about blending your colors. Finally, let's color a tiger. I first apply the lightest shade marker to the chest, belly, and face. Next, I use a light orange marker and begin coloring the body, leaving a harsh, non-blended line between the lightest color and the light orange. Next, with the marker dry, I apply shadows using a dark orange marker. I draw curves or lines and color the created shapes in. Now that we have the coloring figured out, it is time to make some cards. I decided to stamp a leafy frame for my first project. I stamped 2 types of images around the perimeter of my panel. I used the same coloring method and the same colors of markers to color these images green. Next, I stamped, colored, and cut out the monstera leaves and adhered them to the frame using foam adhesive squares to create dimension. I love to add dimension to my cards, and using foam squares is the best way to do it. I cut the excess leaves off using my scissors. It is best to use scissors with long blades. That makes all the difference, and it makes a really nice clean cut. I also stamped, colored, and cut out flowers, and I'll use those to embellish my frame. Meanwhile, I foam mounted a baby elephant in the center of my panel. I love how cute she turned out. I stamped a sentiment that reads, "Congratulations." All of the sentiments you will see on my cards today come from Pretty Pink Posh Simple Sentiments stamp set. Now, I mentioned I'll show you a fun way to use your jewels. I love jewels from Pretty Pink Posh, and I think I have them in every color imaginable. I typically like to use them as accents on my cards, as dimensional flower centers, or to cover any mistakes I have on my projects. For today's cards, I use them to create colorful backgrounds. Here, I added lots of sea glass jewels all around my baby elephant, adding hints of blue, as if mimicking the sky. I used jewels of various sizes and adhered them using glue and my crystal katana tool. For my next card, I started by foam mounting the 2 wines in the top part of my background panel. I also added additional leaves and flowers. With that adhered, I added my party of critters. First, I added my zebra. Next, added darling baby elephant and also a baby hippo. They look so adorable together. I dressed them up using the die-cut flowers. I added flowers in pink and yellow and also added a bunch of smaller leaves. I stamped a sentiment that reads, "Celebrate your day." And to spice this card up, I once again added a bunch of jewels in the background behind my critters. Doesn't this look fun? It adds texture, it adds sparkle, and it adds a ton of wow. My last card features the rest of my jungle critters. I have 4 of them on the card: a hippo, a tiger, a zebra, and once again that darling baby elephant. I added some leaves and flowers to dress this card up and also to embellish my critters, of course. And of course, I added my jewels. This time, I used jewels in Caribbean blue and once again added loads to fill my background and add some color and sparkle to this card. Here's a look at the cards shared in this video. I hope you enjoyed the techniques I shared and you'll give them a try yourself. If you make something inspired by this video, we'd love to see it. Be sure to share it on social media and tag us. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you have any questions, please drop me a comment below. Thanks, love you guys, and I'll see you next time.